What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Blacksmith Podcast, where we forge men from metal, and metal into men. That is our focus over here. I am your host, Will B. Thank you for joining me again today for another episode. Now, today we are going to talk about something that is, let's just talk about it. Becoming a man, right? What am I talking about? Let's first talk about what is manhood. And we're going to first deal with classic manhood. What was classic manhood? Okay. Now, I'm dealing with like back in the days of like Native Americans living in teepees, when we were more tribal. Um, look at Africans when they did that, when they were tribal, Asians when they were tribal. When I'm talking about back then, not four walls and safe cities, like little villages of 10 to 50 people, 100 people trying to survive the winters, fishing, hunting, growing crops and stuff like that. Okay. Now, back then, okay, we're not talking about 2024. Manhood was a title and you had to earn it. It wasn't to be a man, that was a title. You earned it. You didn't just become grow up and you're an 18-year-old male. No. Every 18-year-old male did not get, or whatever their grown age was, did not get the title of being a man in the village, because being a man in the village carried certain weight. It carried a lot of weight. Number one, you could be trusted with a spear, a shield, an axe, a knife, with weapons in the village to help protect and defend the wives and children's while the men went off to war, or while the men went off to hunt and fish every day. Also, you could be trusted with those weapons to stand watch at night while everyone slept. Remember, you're out in the open. There are no safe walls. A grizzly bear could come. You could wind up waking up and a grizzly bear snacking on somebody's ribs. You know that is the kind of times we're talking about. Okay, so not that that's funny, but that did happen, right? So you, as a man, you were trusted with the defense and the safety of the village, and you didn't just protect your family, your wife, your kids. You protected mine, his, everybody's, right? So let's dive right into this, right? So back then, okay, when the babies were born, they spent the majority of the time with their moms, okay? Just how it was. They spent the majority of the time with their moms until they came about 7 or 8 years old. And then they woke up one morning and the men were like, "Hey, where you going?" "I'm going with mama." "No, you're not. You're coming with us." And so they would start going with the men. Now, why did they start going with the men? Because it's time for them to learn. They're going to be a man. So they had to start learning how to hunt, fish, fashion knives from rocks, fashion axes by tying a sturdy stick to a sharpened stone, a club, to fashion a hook for fishing. Learn the art of warfare, punch somebody in the face, get punched in the face. They're going to learn to sprint, climb trees, navigate, right? Navigate during the day based off of like the moss growing on what side of the tree. Navigate blindfolded. What do you hear? I hear the wind rustling through tall grass. So where are you at? I'm near the field. What field? The south field. What side is it on? It's on my left. So what side is the village on? It's behind me. Good. What else do you hear? Rushing water. Where's that? On the left. So about how far is the river? You know what I mean? So they learn to navigate during the day. They learn to navigate at night, celestial navigation. Like this is something that, like even in American history, when slavery was going on, when the slaves were running away, they followed the North Star and the Big Dipper, right? So celestial navigation, that's what that was, but they just said follow the drinking gourd, all their songs. They passed the messages in their songs. But anyway, all that kind of stuff, that stuff was manhood, right? So now when they come back from a day of hunting, fishing, gathering, and all that stuff, they bring the meat, they bring their kills back to the women. The women see the kids for a second, see the husbands for a couple minutes, and then they go and cook the food. And then they'll commune and eat the food, laugh, talk, or whatever, and they go to their campfires and the elders would talk, right? Now, notice I did this. Women over here, men over here. They did not commingle these campfires. And there's a reason for that. Men and women being together all the time is a new concept. It is a romantic era American concept. Back then, okay, men and women separated for most of the day, and maybe that's probably why we got a chance to miss each other a lot. I don't know, maybe that's why they were more together, like when it comes to liking each other, the togetherness. But whatever, not to get off track, it is applicable to what I'm talking about. Women stayed over here. They didn't. What are they talking about? And if they got caught doing that, the elder women would be like, girl, get your, you're in trouble when they start speaking through your teeth. If your parents never did it, I would say lucky you, but my parents, yeah, that would get me straightened out real quick. So the men stayed over here. The boys trying to listen to the girls talking about, oh, cool, go on over there, go on over there. You want to be a girl, put on a dress, go over there. No, no, no. Then get over here with the men, and you're going to stay over here with the men. So it was something like it was just taboo. You don't enter each other's spaces. So the elder women and what they're talking about, the elder women are teaching the younger women to be women. Cook, clean, how to treat your husband, how to respect your husband, because that's like the biggest thing that women need to do, right? They're teaching that. Men are teaching, let's focus on the men's stuff, right? So we get it. Women over here. Men are teaching a lot of stuff. Um, But again, a guy like me, I'm not talking. I don't have nearly enough gray hair to be talking in those groups, right? Um, we're talking, think of the men in our society today that are the oldest, but still with it, right? 70, 80 years old, 90 years old. You can hear some war stories, right? They're telling you about when they faced down a bear, when they faced down a jaguar, when they faced down a warring tribe, when they had to parlay with a stronger tribe or fake them out by putting on bear skins and make them think there were three grizzly bears that y'all controlled and stuff like that. How we won this war without fighting or any, all that kind of stuff. They're talking about that stuff. They're talking about how to please your woman, how to talk to her gently and softly, how to treat her unlike men because she's a woman. And all that kind of stuff. That's manhood, right? So the boys will have years and years of this, right? And I'm getting to it. So all of that, what is the addition? What's the arithmetic here add up to? Well, it adds up to a coming of age ceremony. What am I talking about? So the boys will hit an age where they're 15, 16, 14, 17, whatever. 14 to 17 usually in that age range because they're hitting puberty. I don't know what kind of banshee creature that was. So if y'all heard that, I'm sorry. I got the windows open. It's a nice day. But anyway, so the boys would then go through training, right? They go through a last test. There was a test of manhood, right? And that test was show me everything I have showed you over the past umpteen years. You've had ample time to learn how to fight, to learn how to navigate, to learn how to fish, hunt, set traps, make traps, avoid traps. You've learned enough, right? So here's your test. And the test could range from go catch me a certain amount of fish. Um, go hunt this kind of animal and come back with it on your own, or lead the hunting expedition, and we're going to hunt down something big for the village, and we better be successful and don't lose nobody's life over it, right? To we're going to take a group of men, young hopefuls, days away from the village, and we're going to spend a whole season over there, the winter season, or a whole season over there with them, teaching them this and teaching them that, doing our tests and trials, just having them show us what they learn, and then we'll bring them back as full-fledged men. Or we'll take them there blindfolded or something, and they got to navigate back, or they spend the season over there by themselves, and we come back, and after this happens, after the snow melts, if they come back, they make it back, they're men. Whatever the coming of age ceremony was, y'all get the idea, right? Because there's more than that, right? Historically more than that. So then they were given, they had earned the title of man. It wasn't freely given. So I misspoke real quick. It wasn't freely given. And nowadays we just give the title, we just give the term men to any male that's full grown, right? 18 or over, right? And the problem with that is it muddies the water, because like some people think it's stupid to say that guy's not a man, he's a grown male, right? They may think that's stupid, but what in okay, you could say it's stupid, or you could ask them what they mean. It's all about communication here, right? What they're really meaning to say or articulate, 9 times out of 10, that guy, while he's grown, is not a man by principle. He does not know the things that a classic man would know, or common man would know, to be characterized as a man. For instance, can he change a spare tire? Is he handy at all? Because handy usually came with manhood. We work with our hands, right? Does he know how to shut the power off or reset a panel or breaker panel, right? Electricity, right? Does he know how to cut grass? Prune bush, yard work. Can he do that? Can he rake leaves? Can he, anything that would be classically set aside for men versus women? Can he change the oil in the car? Now, here's the thing: we live in a generation now where people do not really work on their cars en masse. They take them to the shop, so it's even easier. Is he the one that's going to handle all that stuff? Is he taking the cars to the shop, getting the tires rotated? Is he keeping up with that kind of stuff, right? Manhood, regardless of if you're changing the oil, you're making sure the oil's getting changed. Like the bare necessities, like the Jungle Book says, right? The bare essentials for manhood. Um, so nowadays we're muddying the waters. We're just freely giving the term to every full grown guy. And that's a problem, because they have not earned they don't see it as a title, and it is. And when depending on, I heard a sermon one time. It was a couple years ago, and it was talking about Jesus, and however you see Jesus is who he is to you. So if you saw him as a prophet, that's who he is to you. But if you saw him as Lord and Savior, then that's who he is to you, right? And so if you see manhood as something trivial, then you just call every dude a man, and you don't think about it like, is he acting like one, right? A classic man. But if you see it as a title to be earned, right? Then you understand how important it is, and you'll treat it as such. You won't be so quick to call every grown guy a man. And then if you, as an older guy, if you see a guy who needs help, you pull him in and try and help him with those things so he can be, right? And one thing that's always helped men stand strong was community. a sense of community. Notice I said the campfire and I said women, I said men. I didn't say this clique of men, that clique of men, those guys over there, men over here. Whether they like each other or not, they're going to band together at the end of the day. They're going to come together, break bread, community, right? And that's another thing we don't have a sense of. And why is this so important? Becoming a man in 2024 is pretty darn difficult. And I will say one of the main reasons is because the fathers are missing, the men. So, okay, let me not step on my own toes or get ahead of myself. Let me go back. Back then, notice I never mentioned once the women had anything to do with the test and trials of manhood. Not once, because they had nothing to do with it. The women were not the ones who decided who were the new groups of men. It was the men. Only the men who were already men had earned the title previously in the village could consider that next guy or group of guys men, period. So nowadays, those men are missing. They're missing in action, MIA. And there's a lot of reasons why, but men, we got to pay attention to this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of reasons why. With the divorce rate being 50 to 56% somewhere in there in America, that matters. And with like just in the black community alone, right? This isn't a black channel. This is a men's channel, right? But in the black community alone, 80% of the children are born out of wedlock. Now, how do you make that make sense when you're talking about um, men raising the next generation of men to be men? Well, you can't if you're not around. And again, there's a lot of reasons why. So let's go back to all men, right? There are men who have fathered children in jail, locked up for a little bit of time, a lot of bit of time. There are men hooked on drugs. There are men who refuse to be dads to the children they fathered. But now let's talk about, because I understand. Let's talk about, I think, what you could probably consider one of the main ones, and it's not really talked about, divorce. Or maybe they weren't married and they had a child together and the woman got to run off with the kid or play the courts against the father to not allow him to be a dad, but he wants to be a dad. And believe me, a weekend is not enough time. Every weekend, not enough time. 2 weekends a month, 1 weekend a month, 3 weekends a month. It's not enough time to turn a boy into a man. Um, People may not like this, don't care. You don't have to like it. Boys need to spend time with their dads. They need to be dadded after their father, right? They have to be. Dadded, not a word, obviously, but think about it. For those of us who grew up with our dads, our pops, our pa's, our pop pops, or whatever, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, we followed them everywhere. Like me, for instance, myself, I went fishing with my dad. Saturdays, we were cutting the grass. That big old heavy lawnmower, the gasoline and oil mixed in there, and I'm pulling this ripcord, and I'm like 4 or 5 years old, and he's got me out there. Yeah, let's cut the grass. And I'm like, but daddy, I'm 4. Like, this thing's heavy. Pick it up. It's like, what in the world? And it's like, does he not realize like how small I am? But your dad's everything to you when you're that small, and you see him really as Superman before you knew what comic book heroes were. And I'm talking about the guys that had their dads and they were involved parents, they were involved dads. These were our superheroes. It wasn't Logan and Wolverine, Scott Summers. It wasn't the X-Men. It wasn't Superman. It wasn't Batman. It wasn't Spider-Man. Yeah, that stuff was cool to watch. But in real life, and the one you look like you, however you want to phrase it, that man was alive, and you could touch him. In fact, with my dad, I could poke him in his face. I could rub his head or his eyebrows, make him go backwards. I could play with his beard. I could sit on his lap, jump on his shoulders. He roughhouse with me, right? So the art of warfare, he's toughening me up. We roughhouse. He tickled me until I almost pee myself, you know. He picked me up by my ankle and hold me up like this. So now I'm like, wow, men are strong. Men are fast. Men can jump high. These are all the things that you're learning. This is what I want to be like. This man is ridiculously more powerful than I. He's huge. Like my dad was 5'11". His dad was 6 foot even. I'm 5'10". So hopefully my boys can bring it back the other way. But just think about that, right? Why is it that the most fun boys who have their dads can have in a day, it's not playing video games, it's not riding a bike, it's not going to their friend's house. If your dad starts tickling, if I start tickling my boys, or I'm like, come here, boy, and they start running, me chasing them, oh, it's over. Everything else goes out the window. We'll mess the house up downstairs. Just I'll be throwing them over here to the couch. They bounce off the couch, get up, run into me, headbutt me. They love that kind of stuff because we're talking boys. They have testosterone in them, and they're just wired differently. They're ready to go. They're ready to fight. And as men, women nurture. Okay, that's their thing. But as men, we can nurture that boyhood and the manhood, and the way we nurture it is not the same. Okay. Um, we grow it, we train it, I don't know if it was an RPG for all you video game heads, level it up. I don't know how you want to say it, but and then we help the boys get there, but when they get there, what do they know? So we've got to start making sure, man. Let's get to the ending portion of this right now. I'll probably do another video on this because there's really a lot to say about this stuff, and you know, it's so important, right? I mentioned community. Iron sharpeneth iron, right? Um, what does that mean? So that's biblical, right? Iron sharpeneth iron. Iron sharpens iron. Um, so in order for you to be sharp, you have to be, think about it. In order for a stick to get sharpened, you got to use something with the same level of hardness or roughness or abrasiveness or better or rougher or sharper, right? Um, so in order to remember, like way back in the day, knights and stuff, the blacksmith would take blacksmith podcast. They would take a sword and they would have a grind wheel and they're hitting the pedal, and then they would hold the blade at an angle, and that's how it would grind against the metal and sharpen the blade to a point. And then you did it on the other side. Now you got a point on the blade. That's how you make it sharp. Or you take a whetstone, right? And so what you have to realize is that community is very important for men. We can't do this by ourselves. We got to get to where we build communities and get back to being around that campfire together. Because if we try to do this alone, we're going to fail. There's a lot of us missing in our children's lives today. And think about it. If you didn't, and now if I'm talking and you're like, well, this doesn't apply to me, I can't relate because I never had my dad growing up. Great. You are the first generation of turning it around for your family. You are not out of the game, my friend, because a man wants to reproduce. He wants to raise another generation, right? And he wants to see him thrive. So you're not out of the game. You just need to learn. And just think about it. If you didn't learn classic manhood or what it means to be a man, the same things apply in 2024. Like I said, you know, we used to work on our cars. Think about the technology now. Who works on a Tesla? There's sensors everywhere. Um, And a lot of these cars that are not even electric, they make it to where you need a specific like kind of tool, and they only sell it at the dealership, or they have it at the dealership and they don't sell them. So you got to come in there for them to take a whole panel off of your engine so you can even get to the oil or the windshield wiper fluid. So it's kind of impossible to even keep doing that with a lot of these new cars, but maintain the cars. Okay. Get out there and make sure you're in the job world and you're earning, but do yourself a favor, do your family tree a favor, do your predecessors proud, and do your ancestors a a solid by raising. Look at your kids. If you are a dad right now, whenever you see your kids next, I don't care if they're asleep right now and you're watching this. If they're asleep and you can walk in their room, go in their room, look at them, put eyes on them. That's not just your son laying there. That's your next generation of you. That's the next Will. That's the next John. That's the next Naeem. That's him. That's the next generation of your family tree. Stop looking at him as just a kid. Look at him as your generations. That's what that boy symbolizes. And if it's that serious, you need to take parenthood that seriously. So you got to help them become a man. You don't know everything. So talk to men. Let's get men together and let's get in on this thing, because we are losing this game left and right. Look, watch. In the Navy, the Chief's Mess has a saying: when you go through the trials and you come out on the other side of chief. That's all I'll say. You've been tried, tested, and accepted. And that's exactly what we got to do for our sons. And I'm going to make a follow-up video on this and talk about what some of that stuff means. What do they need to know in order to be a man? I'm talking finances. I'm talking about a hard skill. Finances like financial literacy. Do they know how to write a check? Checks are still being written. Do they know how to open a bank account, manage a bank account? Do they know how to balance a budget, right? Financial literacy. Do they know how to invest? Do they know about inflation? Like that's financial literacy. Home buying, right? A hard skill, a degree, certifications, Job Corps, military, all these things. We're going to get into this stuff, right? But just remember, guys, in closing, becoming a man is very important. It's never not been important to the world. It is not a label to give all grown guys. And it's not even, watch this. If you didn't grow up with your dad, this video is not poking fun at you either. Find men that you can see that are what I'm talking about, and hang around with those guys and learn to become a man. This is not to poke fun at you, and it's not to say that it's over. Let's get in the game. You could be listening and be 18 years old, and it's not too late. You could be listening and be 40 years old. It's not too late. Let's get community going. But we gotta meet each other where we're at, but we can all get there. We can all get there if we band together. But becoming a man, guys, that's it. That's all I'm gonna do for this video. But if you like content like this, hit the like button, please. Hit the like button, please, because what it does is it shares it to more people. It makes it go higher in the algorithm. And guys, that's how you're going to build community, right? I might not live in your neighborhood, but you can see this video around the world. And guys like this making videos that are helping people. If you know some men that this can help, share it directly with them. And leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Share your thoughts. Let's have a dialogue. Remember, guys, I am the Blacksmith Podcast, at the Blacksmith Podcast on everything except Twitter or X. It is at Blacksmith Pod, right? Somebody had the handle. But that's all I have for this video, and I will be back with more later.